Kirsty Jones, aged 23, born to parents Sue and Lynn Jones, was from Chidoman, located near Bracken, and was a graduate from Liverpool University. Having a zest for life and wanting to explore and travel, the world became Kirsty's oyster. And what better way to do that than a year-long round trip? Kirsty started her ventures in Malaysia and Singapore before setting her sights on her latest adventure, that being Chiang Mai, Thailand. In early August 2000, Kirsty settled into the avid guest house, which would be her accommodation during her trip in Chiang Mai. This accommodation was described as a typical backpacker's guest house, and was co-run by a British national by the name of Andy Gill. Exploring the sites, Kirsty attended a 3-day trek to the Mae Cham area with assistance from a Karen Hill tribe trekking guide named Narong. After returning to Chiang Mai, Kirsty had gone out to the riverside pub for a meal with her trekking group. Now forward into the evening of the 9th of August 2000, Kirsty went out to meet some friends she had made on her travels. At roughly 11 p.m, Kirsty bid her friends farewell and made her way to the night market to buy some gifts for family. She wouldn't be there long, but little did she know the unfortunate events which would soon unfold, leading to her life being taken from her. At roughly 1:45, screams could be heard echoing from Kirsty's room, with her crying out, "Get out, get out, help me, leave me alone, get off me." Guests went to investigate and gathered outside her room, but unfortunately, no one entered and came to Kirsty's aid. Kirsty was found 15 hours later lying partially naked, face down on her bed, with an item of clothing knotted around her neck in her room by the guest housemaid. It was also alleged that Kirsty's door had been locked by the killer upon leaving the scene. The post-mortem examination revealed that Kirsty had died of asphyxiation due to strangulation, noting that she had also been SA'd. With the Chiang Mai police being notified of the events which unfolded at the Arid guest house, they were unfortunately not the first on scene. Before they arrived, an estimate of 20 people went into Kirsty's room, bearing in mind Kirsty was still laying inside her room deceased, with no evidence collection nor fingerprinting yet to commence. Progressively becoming more of a spectacle, you had a cameraman turning Kirsty's head from side to side for a good shot, as well as opening up Kirsty's toiletry bag, revealing condoms while judgmentally tutting in response. With a now contaminated crime scene, it seemingly didn't concern anyone, especially not the police. 3 separate pieces of DNA were extracted from the crime scene. The first was several dark hairs which they believed belonged to the killer. There was also DNA evidence found inside of Kirsty's body, as well as DNA evidence being found on the dark blue sarong Kirsty was wearing, which was used to strangle her. With such fixation on this case by the world media, it helped highlight the poor handling of the case so far by the Chiang Mai police, with them being scrutinised and held to account for their words, actions and methods. As the pressure continued to mount, General Aram Champen announced days later that the suspect had to either be a guest or an employee from the Arid guest house. He was sure an arrest would be made within a week. Before the autopsy results were known, Colonel Pradeep Tamdi also boldly claimed that Kirsty was enjoying consensual sex with a man before things allegedly got out of control, stating it was an accident. The police were set in their ideas regarding this case, especially when it came to the DNA evidence. They were trying to push that the DNA evidence found inside of Kirsty was planted, but this was refuted by Dr. Tannin, as he stated it was impossible for it to be lodged there perimortal. In total, there were 8 suspects. 6 were foreign nationals and 2 were Thai. The first suspect we were introduced to was Andy Gill, 32, the co-owner of the guest house. Already having a reputation for being a violent drunk and having disappeared 2 days after Kirsty's body was discovered, he seemed to fit the bill. Along with 2 witness statements being given which implicated Andy, given by the guest house manager, Surin Champranet, and his girlfriend, who stated they had seen Andy in Kirsty's room at the time of the murder, as well as seeing him later leave the room. 3 days after the murder, he was arrested in a Chiang Mai bar and charged with conspiracy to murder. Andy vehemently proclaimed his innocence, stating his reason for leaving was because he didn't want the police to find out his visa had expired over 2 years ago. With the mounting evidence against Andy, police were confident they had found their killer, with Police Commander Aram Champen stating, "We are confident we are on the right track. There is no more mystery." Nearly 2 months later, these charges would be dropped and Andy Gill would be exonerated of all charges as there was no DNA match found, as well as the witness statements being discredited as Surin and his girlfriend had contradicted themselves from their original testimony. Suspect number 2 was Surin Champranet, 47, who was the manager of the guest house. He was a massage teacher and a known drug dealer, which didn't help when amphetamines, marijuana, and explicit photographs of foreign women being tied up in bondage were discovered in his room. Further suspects included Nathan Foley, 27, an Australian Brit who was arrested as the night before her murder he had dinner with Kirsty, as well as disappearing for a few hours after Kirsty's body was discovered. Stuart Crichton, 28, an Australian, was suspected as he also stayed at the guest house and was known to be a heroin addict, with heroin and cannabis allegedly being found in his room. Stephen Trigg, 27, a British backpacker, admitted to hearing Kirsty screaming, "Leave me alone, get off me," further admitting that he told those who clamoured to investigate the screams to go back to bed and mind their own business, as it was not unusual for people to argue, as this happened commonly in the guest house. Not much is known about Glenn Lesser besides he was a self-proclaimed ex-Mormon and alleged he was a CIA spy. Now, with it being clear that the DNA profile of the killer was Asian, it completely eradicated the Chiang Mai police's original notion of the perpetrator being a foreigner. Left scrambling and with hardly any Thai suspects, along comes Narong Abraham Poyanantamframpongs, 34. Described as a soft-spoken and gentle individual, Narong worked full-time as a trekking guide. He admitted he remembered Kirsty, but his relationship with her was that only of being another client as a trekking guide. One evening as Narong was walking down the side of a street, he was ambushed by some men in a van, who blindfolded him, pushed him face down on the floor, and forced him to drink some water. Narong awoke in what he described as a cheap motel where he was being tortured by men he believed were police. He was threatened with execution and told that since he belonged to the Karen Hill tribe, he wasn't a real Thai citizen. Therefore, he should confess to the murder of Kirsty Jones in order to help out the country. Narong was then beaten, stripped half naked, and had these men stand on his chest, forcing him to confess. To think they couldn't go any further, they then proceeded to burn off some of Narong's pubic hair and forced him to masturbate. Refusing to do so, one of the men attempted to do this for him, but soon gave up. Narong stated his strong belief in his faith and knowing he was innocent helped him pull through the atrocities he was subjected to. Now passed out, Narong would wake up in an outlying police station in Chiang Mai. No one was able to explain to him how he got there, where he eventually made his way home. It was speculated that Narong was targeted with the intention to make him the scapegoat, as he was considered an outsider and belonged to one of the many ethnic minorities who reside within Thailand. Narong belonged to the Karen Hill tribe, who are one of Thailand's largest ethnic minority groups, having a population of around 1 million. Traditionally, Karen are animists, with strong belief in the spirit world. On August 25, 2000, all 7 suspects were officially dropped as none matched the DNA profile of the killer. Now left with no leads nor suspects, the Chiang Mai police were left with nothing to go on except trying to prove their outlandish theories. From trying to push the idea that it was a duo who committed the murder, with one of the killers being Thai and the other foreign, the Chiang Mai police believe that Surin, the guest house manager, may have been involved, and they thought to test 4 of his friends, 3 who were Thai and the last who was French. I don't quite understand the reasoning for testing Surin's French friends, but I guess that's top work there, even though they knew the DNA profile of the killer was Asian. This theory would be refuted as the evidence pointed to there being one perpetrator. Furthermore, the DNA testing results came back on August 30th, clearing those additional men tested. The Chiang Mai police even revisited the crime scene 2 weeks later and obtained a fingerprint. But not to get your hopes up quite yet, as remember, the crime scene was contaminated from the get-go, with many individuals coming in and out before the police even started collecting evidence. Seemingly not want to pursue the case any further, it hit a stall. Not wanting the Thai police efforts to be in vain, the Welsh police force became involved in 2002 to see if they could lend a hand. Along with Kirsty's parents, they visited Thiland on 4 occasions. Thinking they would be able to help out with the investigation, they were sadly informed that the case had been closed in Thai law. In order for the case to be considered to be reopened, both the Welsh police and Kirsty's parents had to try and persuade the Thai Attorney General. Thankfully, their efforts weren't in vain, as the Attorney General reopened the case. This allowed the Welsh police access to a number of exhibits that were brought to the United Kingdom by Thai police for examination at the Forensic Science Service laboratory. With a full DNA profile, that being the killer was of South Asian descent, the Welsh police suggested a mass screening in the locality of the murder should be carried out. But, unfortunately, with little cooperation from the Thai police, they would constantly hit a brick wall. Though, interestingly, it was alleged that when analysing the DNA profile of the killer against the DNA profile of the previous suspects, they did find that, though Narong's DNA wasn't a match, it did show a remarkable likeness to his DNA, suspecting it may have belonged to one of his relatives. But, again, unfortunately, this line of inquiry petered off with no follow-up. The Welsh police also tried to obtain vital documentation regarding the murder, including witness statements, but were denied access. They were also informed that the Thai police had agreed to forward an official letter of request with supporting documents to enable key witnesses to be interviewed again in the United Kingdom, but it never materialised. In 2007, both the Welsh police and Kirsty's family continually pressed the Thai authorities to make some progress with the investigation, describing the process as being slow and at times painful, where they faced a constant struggle to obtain accurate information from the Thai authorities. Kirsty's mum Sue expressed her frustration, stating, "We have worked hard over all these years to keep the Thai authorities interested in Kirsty's case and to ensure the investigation continued to try and identify the persons responsible for her murder." Kirsty was a bright, intelligent, independent young woman who had the world at her feet. Kirsty has gone from our lives whilst her killer remains at large. Had they been brought to justice, the sadness and emptiness would remain the same, but it may have brought us some closure. Another 13 years would pass by, with the year now being 2020, and yet, little progression had been made, and there were still no answers to who horrifically took Kirsty's life. This year would also be the most tragic. In Thai law, there is a statute of limitations which applies to criminal cases, and with Kirsty's case, the statute of limitations would end on the 20th anniversary of her death. Unfortunately, with no further leads, though Kirsty's family did go back to Thailand in hope of finding more answers, this case would be closed. This sadly meant that even if new information was to come to light, the Thai authorities would be unable to arrest anyone for Kirsty's murder. Every day she is in our thoughts. We still talk about her a great deal. We miss her every day, and we always will. I miss her laughter, and her chatter, and her smile. I miss not knowing what she's doing, where she's going, where she's been. She'll always be 24, but I'd prefer it if she were here and she was 44.